College basketball is back. All of that and more. Cinderella stories, Cinderella hopefuls, and we'll give you a preview of all Division II, Division III, and Division I college basketball previews for the 2023-24 season. All of this and more coming up on the Cinderella Slippers Podcast. As of today, Monday, November 6th, 2023.
Dribble drive kick. 10 seconds to go. Here comes the play. Goodman at the free throw line. Jumper. They are riding a Cinderella wave. 67, 64, 4 seconds left. You don't like the foul, remember. Ivy for the tie. Off the rim, and it's over. This miracle run continues for Steve.
You believe it? For just the second time ever, a 16 beats a 1.
Yeah. Hey, yo, producer, turn this up. We're back, baby. Man, it's been a long time since I played this. Since that Cinderella run last year in the NCAA tournament, it's been an unbelievable time. Last season was a good season. UConn, the national champions in the men's division, and in the women's division, the Louisiana State University Tigers. Kim Mulkey hoping to do it again for a second year in a row, but then we have the vengeance and the fire that is to come with teams such as Nebraska, Indiana, Virginia Tech. Will they be the big-time shots? And I'm getting a phone call. Give me 1 second. Oh, never mind. This is not a number I know. I don't know why it's ringing when we're doing the podcast. I have no idea why it's ringing, but I'm just going to let it ring. I don't know. I've been a little bit under the weather today. So, yeah, that call, I don't know why they're calling me before, but I'll handle that later. But anyways, welcome to Cinderella Slippers, Episode 2. This is the biggest time of the year, folks. The most wonderful time of the year. Will teams like Virginia Tech and Duke, Gonzaga, those schools, will they make it big this year? We have no idea. We got a lot in store for this upcoming season. Cinderella Slippers is brought to you by nobody, because this is brought to you actually by my channel, the Turtle by the Myrtle YouTube channel. At 1,000 subscribers, we are hoping to grow even more this upcoming year. Subscribe to the channel, ring a notify for latest videos, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and subscribe to the 2 newsletters. We actually have a newsletter for this podcast on LinkedIn. The description will have that link to provide you with the opportunity to read my thoughts on college basketball in this season and throughout the rest of this season as well. Welcome, everyone, to the Cinderella Slippers Podcast. Where should I start? Where should I start? There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to discuss, and there's a lot to mention in this 30 minutes that I do have in this podcast. But man, aren't you happy that college basketball is back? We have matchups starting later today. The first one, Georgia and Clemson, is the first matchup of the day. But the first matchup in the top 25 world is Northern Arizona and UConn at 6:30 p.m. Central. Or Eastern, my bad. Eastern. This time change has already got me confusing since it's daylight savings time here in the East Coast. And then the other game following that is Tennessee and Tennessee Tech. And then the first Big Ten matchup of the season is Purdue and Samford. Tomorrow, Indiana, on the cusp of Bob Knight's passing. And if you want to listen to that episode is available. I posted it out on Friday. We have a lot to discuss there with Bobby Knight, a story that I had from 1975. Good stuff on that one, but they play tomorrow against the TikTok-led Florida Gulf Coast who made it to the tournament last year. And have this one kid, I can't think of his name, but this kid, I promise, he's good, but needs to stick to TikTok. He just needs to stick to TikTok. And if they were going to actually invite that kid over to the games at the Harlem Globetrotters, he'd be a future Harlem Globetrotter. Just to be frank, because that's that kid's personality, doing nothing but TikTok dances and all sorts of stuff. But then out of the top 25 matchups, San Diego State, who made it to last year's Final Four, will face off against Cal State Fullerton in the last top 25 matchup of the day. But a matchup that really intrigues me a lot is this USC-Kansas State matchup tonight. This matchup tonight, just like the Indiana-Florida Gulf Coast, I'm really excited to see what kind of offense is going to be produced by both teams. Kansas State is without their big men, lost a lot of guys in the draft, and USC's coming in with fresh blood. Bronny James, who just came back from a horrible heart attack this summer. And hopefully he can be the Cinderella story that we had from last season. And I'm really hoping the best for him. I really hope the best for Bronny this season, but smell upsets. I smell upsets in this one. This Dartmouth-Duke game as well, which I'll get into in a minute, is also intriguing me as well because it's Ivy versus probably two of the biggest educational enterprises in the United States. And it should just be a blowout, but I just said this Duke team's really good this year, and I'll get into that in a minute. But this USC-Kansas State lost a lot of guys last season. USC coming in with fresh blood, as mentioned. I better say USC this season could make an Elite Eight. I like their chances. I like where this team's at. They got some big commits and Bronny. So you got the major celebrity status coming to the forefront for this team this year. And it's just, as I said, this basketball season will have a lot of intriguing storylines. And I'm actually going to get into one in a minute, but actually one more in a minute. I got a lot of thoughts today for some reason. But yeah, this USC-Kansas game, I got Kansas, or USC-Kansas State. I got USC. USC looks prime and pure this season to have a lot of guys come in, do their best, do their jobs, and many people are even predicting that Bronny is going to probably start tonight, which would be huge for the Trojans because, as I said, if many of you don't remember, he had a heart attack back in July, and he was under cardiac arrest. He may have not lived. So for this kid to come back, of course, being LeBron James' son, I mean, he would have gotten the best medical care or ever would have imagined, especially in California. And so we are hoping he comes back tonight. I am scrolling on here through Sports Illustrated, and they did say that he is probably going to come back tonight. And it said one of the nice things is that his heart condition, which was a congenital heart defect, which I actually had a heart defect for years, is actually easily treatable. And they actually said, yeah, he's fresh, he's healthy for this season, but if another cardiac arrest comes on, he may not be able to play in college basketball anymore. And of course, this matchup's also in Las Vegas, so they equally, reading more down, I did not do this research beforehand, I should have. Bronny will not actually play tonight, and his return is still yet to be determined. Just came on the pod just to say that, and yeah, so if Bronny doesn't start, he should be able to play this season, maybe under little minutes, but they're going to have to monitor him like DeMar Hamlin. I mean, I think us as a nation have been stunned with cardiac arrest ever since DeMar Hamlin. I remember where I was in this room where I'm sitting at now, sick as a dog, and I remember sitting in here watching Damar Hamlin get carted off from the Paul Brown Stadium, which actually the Bills played there last night. My gosh, I'm really happy there wasn't no problems last night for the Bills or the Bengals to have anyone else have a heart attack or some kind of major injury. I think it kind of lifted the curse out of Paul Brown Stadium as well, because I have not noticed a lot of injuries there in recent months or years since the Damar Hamlin deal last year. And I remember sitting in here, I was in utter shock. It was utterly shocking. And I was just in awe of how the respect completely was on Damar Hamlin and on that entire team. People were praying. The whole country was at a standstill that time, and it was just a weird time period to start the year off too. It was the second day of the year and this happens. But last night there was no fault, and Damar Hamlin and Bronny James are hoping to make a recovery. But if I were them, I probably wouldn't be playing Bronny just for a little bit to just see how his cardiovascular function will continue to work. But Damar should have retired, just to be frank. Because if you look at the rate of how Damar Hamlin had one of, if not the rarest forms of a heart attack to live from, not to die from, but to live from, many of the cases that have that pass away. He didn't. He's the only athlete I've seen that survived from that heart attack. He could have died. Bronny could have died. And Bronny could have easily perished from this planet, and we wouldn't have known what his future was and how LeBron was going to be this season. But man, it's been a whirlwind, and athletics has never been in this renaissance period when it comes down to advancements in safety. We have more advancements in safety that need to be used at every school in the U.S. And that, as I say, is one of my main concerns with Bronny, is how he's going to get through this season. Now, since he might not be playing tonight, status is probably questionable. I mean, this is going to be one heck of a journey for him and one heck of a journey for this team. And I do see USC going big and far, but hopefully we can see him too. And that does it. I mean, that was my thought on the USC-Kansas State matchup. All in all, just a really emotional matchup for that team. Kansas State coming off their humongous Elite Eight run last year. And, of course, their coach is coming back, losing a lot of guys to the draft. Keyshawn Jack Johnson from last season was the big story because he also suffered a cardiac arrest. He is gone. And then their small forward, he's gone too. He's in the NBA. So Kansas State's going to have little opportunity this year to really capitalize on their thoughts from last year. Low point for this program is if they do not win the Big 12 championship again this year. And I honestly will say this Kansas State team's not looking like last year at all, but we'll see. This is a new group of guys, and we get used to new groups of guys. Even at IU, they got a brand new group of guys. Race Thompson's gone. Jackson Davis is gone. Miller Cup is gone. And I'm really interested to see where this team is going to go with just one returning player besides Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal, who Leal's been on the bench. But we'll have to see. But I got USC winning that one. And now let's go to the Duke Dartmouth one. That one's going to intrigue me a lot because it's Ivy League versus one of the top enterprises in the U.S. for education. Two great enterprises for education in the U.S. We have to remember Stephen F. Austin. We have to remember Bain with the tremendous shot that I don't even... I'm going to be honest, I don't remember much from that Bain shot because so much happened after that. And it kind of fell into the abyss. But anytime you see a team like Dartmouth or, like Arizona, they're going to be playing them literally in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now. Arizona and Duke playing next Friday. It's this Friday. This Friday is when Duke plays Arizona. And that's going to be a classic. It's going to be, I think, one of Duke's biggest recruits, who was actually at Duke and transferred. And North Carolina's biggest player in Caleb Love is about to face his old rivals. And of course, you do remember the case way, way, way back in 2015 when Chase Jeter actually went over to Arizona for a season that I think, from what I could tell, this was from 6 years ago, so that's pretty outdated. So about 2017-18, he moves over to the Duke, Arizona, and then, of course, this Caleb Love situation last spring was very intriguing because North Carolina hasn't really had many transfers to speak of in the last few years that have gone from one place to the next. And now, since Caleb Love's facing a team that he's hated for a long time, that's going to be a matchup that I think the whole country is going to watch. And I would highly encourage anyone to watch down the Division One realms. But all in all, I'm going to say that out of that game tonight, Duke's going to win easily over Dartmouth. But upset alert on that one, too. So we better be playing the upset bell right now. There it goes. And, of course, we have some other matchups tonight. Michigan State, James Madison. Who are you kidding? Michigan State's going to win that one. They're the best team out of the Big Ten. They last season made it all the way to the Elite Eight or Sweet 16. They made it to the Sweet 16. And they are going to go places. Marquette and IU. I think that's another matchup that intrigues me. And I don't know much about them. I really don't know much about them. And Marquette last season made a tournament. But I'm just going to say it's going to be interesting to see Marquette try to get out of a competitive Big East race where you got Creighton and UConn all in the same division. That's going to be a three-way battle to the end, I think. And I think if both teams finish the season at like 27-2, then play in their Big East championship, the semifinals and the championship game will be the ones that I'm going to be really intrigued to watch. And then, of course, another matchup that really intrigues me from this week is going to be the Loyola Chicago and Florida Atlantic game. That's going to be the Barstool game. And Loyola is looking for a chance to actually go back to the NCAA tournament once again. Florida Atlantic, the hype has never been this high. Dusty May, probably the best coach there is, returning players from last season. This is the best Florida Atlantic team they will have this season. Last season, we didn't even know if they were good. We didn't even know. We saw them make the Final Four. And now expectations are so high. If Indiana has a bad season this year, honoring Robert Montgomery Knight and having issue after issue, be frank with you, Dusty May's going to get the head coaching job at IU if IU does terrible this year. Because we got some big time players. And this could mean a lot, not just for Dusty, but also for other coaching jobs around the U.S. I mean, Texas needs someone. Texas Tech needs someone. Arizona State will need someone later. So a lot of these coaching hires are going to be dependent on this one coach who can do it all and say it all as soon as we can get to see how good this Florida Atlantic team really is. They could actually go to the national title. And I know that sounds crazy, but that is true. And I do believe that matchup against Loyola is going to really be the do or die moment for that first half of the season for them. Even though they'll go 0-1, we'll have to see how Florida Atlantic is going to do throughout the rest of the season. And that does it for me for week one. The last team I wanted to mention was Indiana, but I think I got into a little bit of that with Florida Gulf Coast. Indiana's going to win that one big. And then Indiana after that is going to play against, probably in my opinion, one of the more premier teams at Army at West Point, who I think this season are going to go to the NCAA tournament. They are actually, I did find this out. I found this really interesting, and I wanted to put it on the podcast, which is Noah Jager, who was one of the best South players, small guy. Knew him for years, and I knew him in high school. His brother works at. Oh wait, that's James Bomba's brother. Never mind. I was talking about someone else. But Noah Jager, he actually has basketball roots at Army at West Point. He actually right now is, from what I found out, does not play basketball anymore. And I had to do some research to really find that out. And actually, this matchup, to me, won't intrigue me much. If Noah Jager was playing on the bench and Leal was on the bench, it would have made for an interesting matchup and an easy Indiana win, of course. But Anthony Leal and Noah Jager have gone two completely separate ways. Leal's graduated from the school. This is his last season. And I was really looking forward to this IU-Army game. But I do think Army's really going to put the pedal to the metal against Indiana. And now since Noah Jager and Leal will not meet for the final time, not even as a bench warmer anymore, two bench warmers that were big studs in high school, we're not going to see that matchup again this year against Leal and Jager. Because Jager, actually, in 2021-22, that was his last season ever playing basketball. And now he is a command leader, a president of the honor board, and doing some big and amazing things. So if he's listening, shout out to you. And your hard work is really dedicated. He's probably one of the most dedicated kids I've met. And that's what his parents wanted. So, and yeah, if I could honestly see a matchup this season for the tournament, I'd like to see Bradley and IU, because that would then mean a full South matchup between Anthony Leal and Connor Hickman, who were two really good players in high school. Connor Hickman, one time, I think, shot like 8 threes back in high school. But this was back in our days of Bloomington South years. But those are the matchups that intrigue me from Week 1. Coming up next is the matchups from the Division II and Division III matchups. And, of course, some early Cinderella picks, which I'll come first after this from your station. Actually, it's from this podcast. We'll be right back after this.
Sarà perché ti amo, un'emozione che cresce piano piano, stringimi forte, stammi più vicino, se ci sto bene, sarà perché ti amo, e vola si cambia, più in alto si va, e vola che fai, il mondo è matto perché se l'amore non c'è, basta una sola canzone, per far confusione, le dai propri, vola si sa, se più in alto si va, e vola che fai.
Part 2 is coming up in the second part. If you can just select in the playback, Part 2 of the Cinderella Slippers Podcast. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to the second hour, or actually the second part of the Cinderella Slippers Podcast. This is your host, once again, Braydyn Bear-Lents. Just a reminder for each and every single one of you that you can actually follow our LinkedIn page, actually, and subscribe to our newsletter. The Cinderella Slippers newsletter just posted one story this week about Bob Knight, and a story that my family had from all the way back in 1975 that I found to be absolutely crazy. And even to this day, I still find it nuts after I heard the story from my grand aunt in 2019, from when her and her husband were actually once car mechanics in a Lagodi auto repair shop. So you could actually visit. The link is in the description of this podcast, in the description below. But I just wanted to finish out this part 2 by basically talking about the Division II and Division III men's basketball. We're not talking about women's until possibly on Friday, but the men's game. And right now, as I speak, the reason why I'm not talking about the men's is because women's basketball is also going on right now, especially with the fact that basketball season is already officially underway. And earlier today, we had quite the spin move to talk about some big storylines coming out of those women's games as we start off. Then we'll go to Division 2 and 3. Today was the beginning of the women's basketball season, like it is tonight with the men's basketball season. An amazing showing by South Carolina, the number 6 seed team in the country, facing Notre Dame in New York City. South Carolina had a twirling move by one of their players earlier today, just spanned right up to the basket. They ended up winning today's game 100-71. USC upset the number 7 seed Ohio State Buckeyes 83-74. USC is a team I'm beyond excited about. I mentioned earlier about the men's team. The women's are going to be even better than them, I think. Way better than them. And I'm just saying, this USC team has the number 1 ranked recruit in the country, and she's really going to be, I think, to the point of Reggie Miller's sister. I think she could be as good as her. But Reggie Miller's sister, as many of you do not remember, or many of you were too young to know, she won 4 national championships, and that USC team was almost like the modern-day Dukes and Kentuckys. They could have gone places, had a few years of mishaps and slip-ups, but finally are finding their footing with this number 1 recruit. And as I'm speaking right now, we actually have one more game going on, but a tremendous win by USC. They're going to be really shocking a lot of people this year. In South Carolina, I mentioned earlier, they'll be shocking a lot of people this year. They don't now have Aaliyah Boston. They don't have that backcourt presence like they did last year. But that girl making that swirling move, can't think of her name right now. I didn't even watch the game because I've been doing classwork and I've been sick. But I will say South Carolina, they'll shock a lot of people this year. But will they go far? Probably not. I don't think they're going to go far this year. But as of right now, as of 5:46 at night, Virginia Tech is also playing High Point University. And they are leading them with a $1:14 left to go in the second quarter with a 53-28 lead. Now, Virginia Tech made it to last year's Final Four. They were more like an underdog team. They were not going to be out LSU. LSU was way better than them. But, of course, they have one of the top players in the country that's coming back for her senior year. And her, Mackenzie Holmes, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, they're all on and Cameron Brink are all on the Division I AP Top 25 or AP Top 5 team for this season. She's going to really stand out for Virginia Tech, who could eventually go to the Final Four again this year. They have the right tools to do it. They have the right offense to do it. And not only that, they have some of the best players to do it because they will feel the most experienced. And if nothing else, they could get upset in the tournament. And that's something, I hate to point that out for Virginia Tech fans, but that's just going to be the unfortunate factor for me. A lot of these schools like them, and it's currently in halftime now, but Virginia Tech, one of those teams really on the bubble, really off the par compared to the rest of the teams in women's college basketball. It's not that I don't have doubts about them. You can't have doubts about a college basketball or football program right now, especially when we're going to move into this new era of the conference realignments. I love schools like Oregon State and Washington State. Now, since they're all by themselves, they're going to move out of the Pac-12 as well. I mean, that's going to be really interesting to see, but more on that later on down the road. We're not even worried about that right now. But yeah, Virginia Tech, they're one of these teams that could get upset or they could be the hunted more than the hunter. Other games going on tonight in the women's basketball realms. Number 17, Louisville will play against Cincinnati at 6 p.m. The second game, also at 6 p.m., will be Utah and Mississippi Valley. Florida State will take on Charleston Southern. Cal Poly in Washington, the number 24th ranked Washington State Huskies, are going to play at 7 p.m., which would be 3 p.m. Central, or Pacific. And then Harvard is going to play number 14 Maryland. I think Maryland's got a good ball club again this year. I expect them to see them finish second in the Big Ten. Creighton plays North Dakota State. Creighton looks good on the men's and women's side. Made the big run in 2021 and 2022. Alcorn and number 25, Mississippi State, play at 7:30. The number 3, the most exciting team in basketball that will probably win the national championship outright, Iowa Hawkeyes, play the FDU, believe it, Fairleigh Dickinson Knights at 7:30 p.m. tonight. And that one should be an easy win for Iowa. My jaw would drop to the floor if I heard they lost any of their opponents this year. They're that good of a team. And I mentioned Caitlin Clark, the best overall player in college basketball right now. There's no one else that's not up to that point. Then here's a matchup after that Iowa game, during the time of that Iowa game. LSU, number 1 versus number 20, Colorado. That'll be exciting on all levels. LSU will deservedly get it done. Iowa, you just expect to see the two of them possibly in the championship rematch. That's going to feel like the Utah Jazz and the Chicago Bulls. This is the 97-98 Bulls. I mean, it's either going to be John Stockton or Michael Jordan. So, it's one going to end a career for another. But Jordan, you have to remember this, Michael Jordan did not actually win a championship. But Iowa is deserving. They're the most deserving team to win it all. In the final 2 matchups at 8 and 8:30, Baylor will play against Southern University out of the HBCU. Baylor's ranked number 19 in the country. Don't expect them to make a lot of noise this year. They could get upset once or twice, but we'll have to see on that. And then upset alert, ding, 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 UCLA and Purdue. Big matchup. Huge matchup for that game. Purdue and UCLA. UCLA's coming in with a lot of power, them and USC. So expect California to hear a lot of them this year. You're going to hear a lot of them this year, especially. Tomorrow, you got 2 matchups as well in the women's basketball realms. Tennessee at number 11 plays Florida A&M. Illinois plays Morehead State tomorrow at 7 p.m. And that Tennessee-Florida A&M matchup was at 6:30. Illinois-Morehead State at 7. Wednesday, you will have Dayton at UConn, Gardner-Webb at UNC, Southern University against Texas, Lemoyne College in DeWitt, New York versus Colorado. Hawaii and Stanford will play on Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the evening. So it's already going to be dark. Like, it already is dark, and it's almost 6 p.m. Tennessee, this matchup is going to be really good too. But the last matchup I really wanted to mention that I really have my eyes on are Eastern Illinois and Indiana. Indiana's not going to pack out the stadium the first day. But when they're playing against Big Ten opponents, expect to see them fill that Assembly Hall floor this year. Expect it. It's going to get wild in there. Ticket prices have never been this high for a women's basketball game. I can recall to you right now, that's the only time I've ever seen it this high. Since we've won that NIT in 2018, we've gone places. Here's what I'm going to say about Indiana. And I'm going to actually get to the Division II and Division III men's and women's basketball, or more men's basketball. And I know I'm not talking about women's basketball today, but I wanted to get a little bit into it. Then this Iowa and Virginia Tech matchup intrigues me as well as the Tennessee-Florida State matchup on Thursday. Indiana, this season, run by Terry Morin. Mackenzie Holmes is back. Sydney Parrish is back. And then Scalia is back as well, along with Yarden Garzon, who is the best three-point shooter, but she is not Grace Berger. Without Grace Berger on that roster, none of them are Grace Berger. That team would legitimately have gone more places, won more championships. This is the end to a very good era of Indiana University basketball. Terry Morin has really solidified herself as being one of the top. But my question is, why does no one want to go to her program? And I think, as I've tried mentioning and then it got shut down, IU's kind of in this renaissance period in women's basketball. Bob Knight had just passed away 2 weeks ago, about a week ago, and Terry Morin's the closest thing to him that we've seen in the program. Mike Whitson's so lax. You saw it with McKinsey McCouple. He couldn't catch a break. Got fined $1,000 for misbehavior, and they're all misbehaving on that IU team for the men's basketball team. And more than before, the women's basketball team is a lot different than the men's. This is where you have a lot of fans, a lot of faithful who come out to these games but don't pack the stadiums against Charleston Southern or Tennessee Tech or someone like that, but then they're going to pack the gym for Purdue and Iowa. And let me tell you something. This will be the most exciting. This will not be like last year and the year before that. This season, I think Indiana's going to not... I think they're going to go places, finish second or third in the Big Ten Conference, not win the tournament. If we do win the tournament, I'd be stunned. And if we win the NCAA tournament, I'd be really stunned. But I don't think that's going to happen. This team does not have Grace Berger. It doesn't have Cardano Hillary. They were small and mighty and absolutely defended the floor like they were doing the last 2 seasons when that team was good. Against Miami, Grace Berger was not in front guarding that. Oh, crap. I can't think of her name right now. Okay, the Calvender twins. I had to think about that for a minute. The Calvender twin. And when we were guarding on her and Chloe Moore McNeil, yet she's one of the worst defenders I've ever seen play Indiana basketball. Worst defender. No one is like her. She tripped and fell against Caitlin Clark. She trips again and loses the ball when she could have made a pass for the 3 last year against Miami. I'm still pissed over that. Still, and it's November 6th. I'm still pissed. Who would want to deal with something like that? That game was humiliating near the end. Hard fought, but humiliating for reasons that are so comprehensive I'd like to talk about in another episode. But Indiana absolutely could win the Big Ten Conference, but not the NCAA tournament. I don't even see them getting ranked that high. They're going to have falls. They're going to have trips. This is not the team from last year. Last year, why they were so good was because of the 3-point shooting by Parrish, the great defending by Grace Berger, who took over the Mackenzie Holmes role that we saw 2 seasons ago when we were playing against Princeton and Mackenzie Holmes was just fiery. She was on fire. She was on fire that whole season. Grace Berger became the fire to their light to the torch last season against the great offenses and defenses of great offenses of their time of Big Ten basketball. Nebraska they could guard out. Purdue they could guard out. Iowa they could guard out until the end. That was when we saw their flaws. This season we're going to see their flaws. We're going to see a lot of Indiana's flaws. They're not going to be the great team that we're going to see from years past. We're going to see them be hard to press, hard to cover. And people know now. I was even saying this last year. People know now what Indiana is doing to win games. They're going to take that film. They're going to crush them. They're going to destroy them. I'm not saying they're going 0-11. I'm saying they're going 7-7. I hate to say it, guys. I hate to say it for my future alma mater. And I love IU. I love the men's and women's basketball teams. But there's just something about this team that to me is just, no, I'm not even going to watch it this year. I am going to watch it, of course. I didn't mean to even say that. I'm going to watch it, but I'm not going to watch them when they're going 7-7. It's like, who would want to see that? And there's so many great teams in the Big Ten. Iowa, Nebraska, Purdue. Just some great teams. And then some other teams I can mention are, of course, Maryland, Iowa. It's just going to be very competitive in that Big Ten field this year. Like volleyball. It's a lot like the volleyball team. The Indiana volleyball team could literally be ranked as the number 12 seed in the Big Ten and still win the volleyball tournament. I'm not saying they'll finish 12th. I'm saying this women's team's going to show their flaws, and their flaws are really going to be known. And teams like Tennessee and Iowa and Michigan State are really going to take a hold of those mistakes. They're really going to. They're going to find a way to press. They're going to find a way to defend, and they're going to make Mackenzie Holmes weak. That's my big issue with this team this year. It's not that they're not going to do great things. I just think Indiana has a lot of defensive wounds that they need to repair because Grace Berger and Cardano Hillary and Ali Papberg are not there anymore. And they were great defenders. The best ones I've seen from that program. And in men's or women's. And I'm just saying, this team could have even done something even more unthinkable if they didn't lose to Michigan State last year, and that is they could have absolutely gone undefeated. But without that, we're showing their flaws. No one wanted them. They needed more press. First and foremost, they needed more press. But to end all this, I'm just saying Indiana's going to show a lot of flaws this year. This Eastern Illinois win will be a huge win. Maybe 100-59. Expect it. Dream it. But don't dream championships this year, Indiana. I don't see that happening. So that does it for my thoughts on the women's basketball games. I knew we were not actually going to be talking about that. I personally didn't even want to talk about it because I just, for some reason, I just did not want to. But, however, we have a lot to talk about in men's basketball as well. What ESPN calls the real basketball. But I don't call it that, man. I don't call it that. Women's basketball this season's got to do some impressive things. They're going to be very impressive. Not just in Division 1, but also in Division 2 and 3. Division 2, actually, I have it on here. Division 3 hoops are going to look really exciting this year. I mean, Trine is a school that I really see making it big. They had a big run last year. And then on the Division 2 realm of men's basketball, which I'll get into in a minute, Kentucky Wesleyan. What a win against Louisville. What a win against Louisville. But more on that later. I know I don't want to get like here, there, and everywhere. So I'm going to just stick to the women's basketball. Trine's going to be a good team. Hope College last season. Shout out. I mean, I'm not even going to give that shout out. But actually, Hope College, very good team. They won season 2 years ago. They went undefeated. They were an impressive team. This team reminds me a lot of Iowa. They can shoot on the perimeter. They can shoot from three. They're great at defense. That's what they're really good at, and they've been good at that for almost 20 years. And Hope is better than it's ever been, but I expect to see upsets come out of Division 3. I don't see a lot, but I do see some. And I personally love this team, this Hope College team. They, of course, as I said, went undefeated. They have some great defenders coming back. It's an older team, which is one of the things I noticed even watching their games last year. It's like you see more seniors on there than you do freshmen. And Hope College is a really dominant team, but also Trine could upset and rule the table. New York University, the former Division I powerhouse until the betting scandal got them in the 50s. And then, Trine and New York University are two of my favorites besides Hope College to maybe win a national championship because of their dynamic pressure and the fact that, New York University has, of course, Natalie Bruns, Morgan Morrison, Megan Ballman, probably one of their best guards and underrated players. She's a senior, really attractive to the perimeter. It's going to be really fun to see those teams do really well this year, Trine and New York University. But also, I'm just going to say a lot on the table if you do think about it. And, of course, Division 3 would not be complete without mentioning those two schools in the women's realms. For the men's side, the Division 3 players that I believe have a great advantage for me to actually know teams that I do see having a really good advantage, and I don't think it's listed on here. I don't think I had it in my notes. I just wanted to see what in the world. Huh. Well, I don't have the men's basketball. Oh wait, here it is. Never mind. I can't believe I did that. But no, for the top 25 for the men's, before I get to the top 25 of the women's, John Carroll's a good school. John Carroll could win the national championship. And this was from last season. Last season, John Carroll, which I believe used to be an NJCAA school, more on that later. I'll get to that at the very end. But John Carroll finished 23 and 5, with Christopher Newport finishing as the national champs and UW Whitewater finishing at number 2. And I'm just going to say Wabash is on here too, number 16. Wabash has a good team, and North Park has a good team. North Park, shout out to Delaney Lynch, and Washington University are looking like they... Now, Washington University had the big thing in 2022, I believe, with the player that had cancer. And New York University is also on here, as well as long as Johns Hopkins. Out of all these teams, I would say the national championship is John Carroll because they got a really good guard. I think he played over at Vincent University. And he was really good on the perimeter, really good from 3. But the best team ever in any Division 2 or 3 is Grinnell, who hardly wins championships. And that shocks me. That shocks me. And as I said, women's basketball and men's basketball are so much different, but Grinnell's just a different animal when it comes down to their teams. And I don't even see them on any of the Division 2 or 3 lists. No Grinnell whatsoever. And they're a 3-point shooting team, but they barely have got it done in recent years. In the tournament overhead, there was just I think there's some hospital activity because there's a hospital just right across from where we always record our video or our podcasts and videos. Out of the Division 3, New York University is going to be the most likely to win the national championship. So I was right on that. And then Tufts University as well. And Tufts, geez, they're tough. I mean, Transylvania was tough last season, but Tufts, whew, jeez. When they played Hope, they know how to run the table. I must have gotten Division 3 confused. No way, never mind, I didn't. But Hope College and Trine, tough schools to face every single year. And Hope College, they're probably not going to win the national championship this year because they're not like that 2021 team. However, I do think, New York University and Tufts could be meeting each other in the Final Four next season or even the possible national championship. And then Scranton, home of the office, is also a really good team, really good defensively, and have a good front runner to win in the national championship. But these were the top 25s from last season in Division 3. Let's go now to Division 2. And in the Division 2 realms, the University of Indianapolis is on here at 26 and 5. They have a great defensive team. And I think out of all these schools, Minnesota, Duluth, I like to see the University of Indianapolis go farther, or even Indiana, Pennsylvania. One of these teams could go undefeated. Now, Nova Southeastern won the national championship last year. This year, I don't have them doing that. But I would like to see the University of Indianapolis or Indiana, Pennsylvania. I feel like either of those teams could go to national championship rounds. I could not find hardly any information because it's really hard to find information for D2, but really easy to find information for D3. And I do think Indiana, Pennsylvania, or Indianapolis, Indiana is going to probably win the national championship for Division 2 this year. But as I said, it's hard telling. But some of the top players that I am actually looking out for this year are like Jackson Money from Northern State and Ethan Porterfield. He was a good player last year. I remember watching him, and that team, as they said on here, it's remarkable for them to, and this is from the NCAA.com, they say that's quite remarkable when you consider that IUP has gone 123-10 since 2018 and 19. The Crimson Hawks head coach Joe Lombardi, who actually talked about this first, talked to a reporter and said that Porterfield was one of the best players he's coached in the past 5 years. And he was really good last year. I remember watching him. They say he's a big-time scorer and an All-American, but people don't really see all of what he's able to do because, of course, these D2, D3 schools don't even get much traction, and that's where people like me come into the play and do actually talk about it. So he's been, it sounds just like a really motivating player. When I saw him last year, he has a different fire to him. And it's Indiana, Pennsylvania team. The Hawks could go places. I mean, they really could. And, of course, he's 6'9" and has really grown on the three-point percentage marks. And, yeah, it's like unbelievable. At 93-7, jeez. That's just amazing. From one kid to another. And one other player that I would actually be looking out for, who used to, and you have to remember, Southern Indiana used to actually be a Division II school before moving into Division I full-time. But Northwest Missouri State could be one of those teams that could actually go to in Division I one day. And that player, Bennett Straits, he was great too. Last year, finished as freshman of the year, while also leading the conference in field goal percentage and assist to turnover ratios. And is a dangerous three-point shooter, hitting 43.8% of his shots from downtown, and tenaciously, he's fantastic on defense. And he's second in steals. Wow. Jeez. But yeah, reading those things will make him probably very hyped. But out of all these players, there's only 5 on here that both the NCAA mentioned and that I mentioned. But Division II, this will be exciting. This will be really exciting again this year. Not much to say because I don't really have enough notes on Division II. I had more on Division III. So that does it for Division II and Division III's previews. The NJCAA, one of my heavy favorites, and this I'm going to wrap up the entire episode by talking about the NJCAA. The John A. Logan and Vincent University are 2 of my favorites to possibly win the national championship this year. Vincent University, throughout the pandemic, I remember being there during the pandemic. As many of you do not know, I was a former Vincent University student before transferring full-time to Indiana University and then going to Ivy Tech and then back to IU because of behavioral disciplinary reasons along with some sickness and illness. But more on that later. Probably another episode I'd mention that. But Vincent University has some of the top players. I think academically they are awful. They were awful even when I was there. But somehow, some way, this whole school, somehow, some way, has decided to turn the tables a little bit since I left. And they have been able to really rock and roll, to say the least. And they've really rocked and rolled last season to a quarterfinal NJCAA appearance. That's something they haven't done since before the pandemic. Now, you have to remember, in 2019, they played in the national title. That was their first title in 40 years. And that school has been in existence since 1801. And it's the oldest school in Indiana, the oldest college in Indiana. It's crazy. It's crazy to see that VU team do really well. But a lot of their guys that were causing trouble sound like they're gone. They are really hitting it from 2. And really improving as a unit that John Thompson, I think his name was. No, John Franklin. Bad guy, good coach. Really bad guy, but a really good coach. I worked on their press in the pandemic years. And those years were just really fun to work with the coworkers I had. But one thing I remember about that team very well was that their three-point ball was good and their defense was even better. And I think it sounds like the defense has gotten even more better since I left. And they actually made a quarterfinal appearance while having walk-ons. And you got to remember, Vincent University is still struggling. They're ranked like one of the top 150 community colleges, I read this one day, and in the United States, and could win $1 million in funding money. And that they really need. But my thoughts on VU are different than thoughts of other alums. And I had personally a pretty decent experience. Not a good one, but a pretty decent experience there. But running the tables, Indiana, as I said, Vincent University is one of the schools that I think could really make the run to the playoffs. But the John A. Logan squad, this is a good team. This team would finish second in the NJCAA last year. They've had some guys that really improved from the other year and improved from the COVID year. Of course, NJCAA is so much different. So much different than NCAA basketball. There's no regulations and their tournament is different. So a lot of these guys are staying poor for a long, long time. And they have to find their own footing to get into a 4-year. No NILs, no nothing. But they still get public domain and recognition. But not as much compared to the Division I schools, which is why I've always been a big fan of the Last Chance U. But John A. Logan and Vincent University are my two favorites to win the championship this year. High favorites, of course, for VU as a former, I shouldn't even say alum because I'm not even an alum, but as a former student, I wish them luck. As John A. Logan, I wish them luck. But I don't really care about either or, and don't really care about the other side. But anyways, that wraps it up for part 2 and actually the whole Cinderella Sleepers podcast. This is the Cinderella Slippers podcast. Almost got that wrong. Cinderella Slippers podcast. This is Braydyn Bear-Lents. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to Anchor. Follow us. Give us a review. I'd love to hear what you guys talk about with this podcast because we actually do talk a lot about just a lot of sports and guests. That is still in the workings. But we will make sure we do that. Also, just a friendly reminder, on the week of December 11th, I have finals week then. So no matter what's going on, we will actually might have a special episode for the Indiana-Kansas game because I'm not going to be on campus during that. I don't think a lot of us will, but unless they need help with WIUX or something. But if you need to hear about more Division II, Division III, Division I schools, making it big, making it far, this is your home. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the show. Have a great rest of your night, your day, whenever you're listening. Follow us on wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Have a great day, and I hope we can wear our slippers to see another team have one shining moment. Thanks, and have a good night, everyone. Take care.
This episode was from the Braydyn Bear Podcast Network.